Hi, thank you for inviting me. As you hear since a few seconds, I'm not English talking, I'm French talking. I'm coming from Belgium, you know, the center of Europe. Belgium is really quite a very tiny country. So I'm not only architect, we have a small agency of 15 architects. We do all but passive house since 2009 now, 100%, even in retrofitting, renovation, whatever. I'm also teaching at university, so I'm going to show you some examples that the poor student has to live with. What I'm going to explain you is how, briefly, in a region in our country, the main region, we achieve passive house now. It becomes a mandatory law. So since the beginning of this year, if you want to have a building permit, no matter it is a new build, renovation, no matter the destination, you have to fulfill passive house. So if you don't want to do passive house, no problem, but then you have to leave the country. But it's okay. But you will see how it happens, because it was an accident. It shouldn't happen, but it happened. And then how do we live in such a context as architects, because it's now normal. So, and then we are going to show you some unexpected consequences, some very, very cool. And also now that all is going to passive house, it's what's next? What are we doing now as architects now? How can we refeed architecture? So on the right you have Brussels, Belgium, you see. So we are here in New York. This is just to compare, because it's kind of a joke, that country, because it's so tiny, so small. So our population of the entire country is half of your state. Can you imagine that? And that's our region. So we have only 3 regions. So you have much more states, but we have 3 regions only. And all what is environment and urbanism, it's regional. So we have a government, a president, and ministers, and they decide what to do locally. We don't have to follow a federal government. For the construction, because I'm going to come back a few times on cost, our average construction cost or renovation is quite the same. It's 150 plus or minus dollar square feet. If I compare with that data I found somewhere in internet, we have the same prices than in Arizona or something like that. So we are quite far from New York City. Okay, this is all our country, and Brussels region, it's here in the middle. These are all certified passive house, but from our passive house platform, local one. So the law has been voted by the government at the unanimity. We have always coalition. It looks weird maybe for you, but we mixed all the parties. But the totality of the coalition vote the law of the mandatory house, passive house, that was in 2011. And one of the reasons they could vote that law, I shouldn't say that, of course, but it's thanks to ignorance, because they didn't know what we were talking about. Hopefully, otherwise, no way that they would have voted such a law. Of course not. But nevertheless, we achieved that. So here we see the president, the ministers are here, and one of the ministers, she's a quite nice woman, she's a friend now, she proposed that law and said, okay, why don't we go for mandatory? But before doing that, they had a lot of questions at the parliament and so on. Is it possible? Did you make feasibility study? Are you sure that we have the skill? Are architects able to do it? Contractors, whatever? And what the extra cost, you know? And always what they could answer is we have done no feasibility study, no university study, nothing. We just look at our local stock of passive house building was growing, and they just saw what can we learn of what people is doing now. And so this is one of the key elements to achieve that policy, is that first they start to give how to push the local stock of passive house. And I'm going to show you one of the actions they've done. And they had an amazing success, because in only 4 or 5 years, we achieved 1 million meters square, like it's 10 million square feet, of course. So the region we have here in blue, it's that policy. So when they push passive house building, and the 2 other regions who are bigger than our region, they had another policy. It was, well, don't push too far, don't go too far, but just give some help for putting some solar panels, but just gadgets, okay. So we saw that after a few years, it's not such a good policy, of course. But having a third of the country goes to passive house is quite something. Of course, it's our scale, it's not as big as your skill. And the effect was immediately amazing. So we did a survey 2 years ago. It's been just adapted now, not only thanks to Passive House, but it's a general policy for renovation of the buildings, because it's also almost also 70% of CO2 emission. We have already a drop of 20% CO2 emission compared to 1992. Not compared to 2010, as the G7 proposed last Monday, but it's already okay. So we were surprised. So it's possible to do it. Despite we have an increase of population, this is the growth of jobs thanks to these policies. So it was a surprise, not only for us, but also for the government. So how did we get there? So one of the actions they've done was an amazingly big effect with almost nothing to invest. It's what they call exemplary buildings. So the region is like, you would say, New York State propose, who want to have $110 per meter square, and I give you that, but you're going to have maximum $225,000. So if I ask you, would you like to have that? Everyone would say, of course, I won't have that money. But to have that money, you just have to go as far as you can. You don't have to fulfill Passive House, but just do what you can, and we will see. So the first year, when they launched that program, they received only like a bit less than 100 proposals. And in those 100, we proposed a lot of projects. We forced our client. A third of these projects were Passive House. That was in 2007. And years after years, during the crisis, 2008 and 2009, every year they were coming back. Who want to have maximum $200 and something thousand. And the more the crisis was there, the more people were coming. Of course, I want that money. But what happened? The second year, when they launched that policy, people look back last year, who was the winner? What they did to have that money? And they said, oh, they did Passive House? Okay, now I'm going to do it, because if my neighbor had it, I want to have it also. And what was clever is when they proposed that, it was no matter the destination. You could be a private, a municipality, schools, a kindergarten, or a developer, a bank, whatever. Everyone could have it. But another thing they did the region is not only they give money for people who want to go as far as they can, with a maximum of 50 maximum awards, but also they set a huge support for architects, engineers, contractors, and so on. So our platform, I was president for the Belgian Passive House platform for 8 years, I would say, 8 years. So we receive a lot of help from the region to help the stakeholders. And people could come, it was for free. They had free guidance, free, I will show you, trainings and everything, of course. I'm going to come back on that after. So one of the questions we had when Thomas Soleri came with people from the mayor here and from Seattle and so on, that was last month. It was, but where is the money coming from? Because who has money? We have no money. We're not Switzerland or whatever. I like Switzerland, don't worry. But of course we don't have money. But our region, they just said, look, if everyone pays the bill of, as I suppose Metropolitan here, they pay the bill, I suppose, I hope so. But if everyone does that in our region, that gives $4 billion to the energy provider. It's private, like here, it's a private company. But when it becomes private, our region said, look, you can sell energy as you want, no problem, but we going to charge you 1%, 1.2%, which is nothing. So after, with that money, it's up to the political decision. You can build fountain, plaza, cool, why not? That's what they did before a lot. Or you can reuse that money to give it back to people who want. So 1.2%, it's absolutely nothing, but it's our money actually. So this is where it's coming from, so it's so easy. But after doing that for 4 or 5 years, so from 2007 until 2011, we had already a local stock of a lot of kind of destination building, retrofitting and so on, all Passive House, no Enerfit, but 100% Passive House. And there was already a lot of feedbacks. For example, one project on 2 has a cost which is cheaper in Passive House than normal building. That's not normal. And for architectural design, there could be very crazy forms and so on. So it was a surprise. So of course, when the parliament asked, but normally Passive House should be an extra cost of 10, 20%. And then the minister said, yes, you're right, but here, look, in our local stock, look what we have. Half of them are done with a lower price than classical, so etc., etc. But of course, when the law has been voted, because no one understood nothing, it has been published, so we have a king, so it's a king's law, whatever, okay? But after, all the lobbies, all the stakeholders, real estate, contractors, Code Institute, architects, federation, engineers, they all become crazy. When I say crazy, my God, it was like war. So they all came back to the minister. You're crazy. It's going to be a strike on the street. We are in a deep crisis. Then we're going to abandon your country. And then the minister, okay, you want to abandon? Ciao. Well, she was, my God. I also thought she was crazy, but okay. But it worked. But what happened in 2011 when they received all the complaints and everything, then we proposed to all the stakeholders, okay, look, we have 4 years before the law starts. What should we increase? Where should we work together? So we set hundreds of trainings and support and helps sector by sector for real estate developers, plumbing companies, I don't know, craftsmen, all apart together. And that helps. And at the end of 1 year of discussion, hard discussion, I can tell you, we all signed together what we called Passive House 2015 Pact. It's like it's a pact. When they all decided, okay, even if some were against, they signed it. They had no choice, actually. But from the beginning, the minister said, we're not going to change any point of the project of the law. It stays. We can arrange how you want, we can give you help you want, but we don't change the law. All that is part of a huge project we are finishing now. We are like 14 regions in all Europe. It's always crazy. We do something in Europe because we have 27 countries. But nevertheless, this is also with PHI. We have France, England, Italy, and so on. It's in the PASREC. It's translated in 10 languages. So that process is completely explained what was good, what was not okay. And it has an enormous effect, that exemplary buildings, because we saw all kind of projects arriving from any kind of design and everything, but all fulfill Passive House just to get that incentive. Now, of course, because it's the law, it's normal day now, Passive House, they could stop all the incentive, and this money now go for social. That's not bad. But even what is a good sign is that also the government ourselves, for their own building, this is the environmental administration, their own building is also a Passive House. It doesn't look like Passive House, but okay, it's Passive House. Even the energy provider, his own headquarters is Passive House. Of course, he's not stupid. But what happened last year, in September, we had new election, a new government, a new coalition. Of course, the former minister, she's fantastic, but she was not re-elected. She has a new one. And when she came, but Thomas, you meet her. She's okay, the new one. She understands nothing, but she accepted. And they said, okay, we're going to keep the law. We don't change it. We will see. And what happened during a few months before the 1st January of this year, all the lobbies went back, even the one who signed the pact, of course. What do you think? So they came back and said, oh, Madame la Ministre, you should remove the law. It's going to be hell, etc., etc. So it was like crazy, and forget it, and etc. I don't know what. So what happened January 1st this year, I went to this is a picture I took. This is the administration of the urbanism administration, and I came and I take a picture in the morning of it was a bit drunk, but okay, I take a picture, and there was nothing, no strike, nothing. So then we went to all the municipalities and to see, is it the end of the world and so on, like the Maya predicted, and nothing. So all that for that. So now we are on the Passive House law, and so what? It's okay. So now, how we live in that situation, because we start Passive House only in 2002, so it's not that long, I would say. So we do all kind of renovation, new builds, all kind of destination. Mainly, it's competitions, which is not that good. Well, it's cool, but not that cool, because when you lose everything, you not pay. But we do 90% is just competitions, large scale. But we have put a lot of effort, while I was also president in that Passive House platform, into the communication. So we did a lot just for free, for fun, of course. So we set that magazine. It's called Be Passive. It was given to all architects. It's a quarterly magazine. We stopped in September. Now we launch a book who explain all that. So Ken has some exemplary of that book, French, English, and Flemish, always 3 languages. Crazy. So now we do communication in our company ourselves, magazines, all that. Research and development, it was done in the Passive House platforms. Now we reintegrated that, and I'm going to come back to that. So now we have, we got a project from also, we build not only in Belgium, but we doing the Belgian embassy. It's a crazy story. In Central Africa, it's in Congo. Of course, Passive House. In Côte d'Ivoire, we have another condominium. And very recently, there is a project here in Meatpacking, and maybe in second in Newark, we will see. But apart from that, we do a lot of conferences or some training, masterclass, whatever, even in Shanghai and so on Passive House. This is in Europe. So before 2006, it's at that moment that we start to make just but Passive House, apart one of two still thick building here, but all the rest now, it's all Passive House. What else? As George would say. And it's, we do now middle scale building. It's like, I would say, 5 to 10,000 meters square. So it's a 50 to 100,000 square feet. So you see here the scale of the bigger one. Now we just won. I'm going to talk that. It's a completely district. It's 300,000 square feet. And here you can see how many liters of coffee you have drink per project. The thing interesting is it's not the big district who kill us in coffee, but it's our first Passive House, of course. It's like your first building, what you think. But now, it's normal, just Passive House. Okay. So these are the magazine, all that you can download for free on internet. You have dozens of downloads. Of course, it's free. So, but in the beginning, how to communicate? Because, you know, the very first project we did in Passive House, we didn't ask our client, do you want a Passive House? Of course, it's a what? So we just did it. And our client knew nothing. It's only at the end. They just ask us, oh, is it normal that during the work you bring such big installations? Yeah, don't worry. Then, yeah, I saw triple pane glazing. I said, yeah, don't worry. But the thing is, it was a school, but it was not foreseen, but the cost of that school was 90% cheaper, 90% than compared to classical, so it's 10% cheaper. So our client never asked nothing because it was not extra cost, but lower cost, which is not good for us because we are paid a percentage, so it's a catastrophe, really. We hate that, but at the end we explain him, look, if you have a Passive House, your heating would be like a coffee. Now it's 2 coffee each month, not more, like $5 or $10. Then they understand, this is why we use George. So we did a lot of campaign 2-3 years ago of, you know, Passive House is nothing. It's just a house, it's a building or whatever. So what is exceptional or extraordinary is the people. It's not the buildings. It's just about people. That's why we use friends, all kind of borderline friends, to say, I'm in Passive House, but I'm normal. And we set also that video. So I'm not going to show it, Thomas, don't worry. For someone who showed that, maybe, because otherwise you're not going to take it seriously. But this is a crazy thing. It's a video we did. It's a bit sassy one, really. It's a bit dirty at the end. But what is crazy, we do a lot of small training videos and so on, how to put tapes and whatever. And when we have 100 views on YouTube, it's like, oh my God, we party. And here, we did a not serious one, someone who go to a house of pleasure and so on. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, but they show everything on Passive House. And because it's a bit sassy, well, super sassy, I would say, they have more than 223,000 views. So it was very funny. So if you want to go to see it, I visited the Passive House. I showed just the last action we did in 2007. In the beginning, it was becoming known by people. We make a small competition in the Museum of Modern Art here. It was an ice challenge. So we put 1 ton of ice in both houses. One is a Passive House, and the other one is not Passive House, as all the country or everyone here. So we put it there. It was in May, and during a few weeks, people could bet on internet how much ice is going to stay in both after 6 weeks. So we put here 1 ton of ice. Actually, there was 2 tons, but we broke one, of course. So okay, that was 1 ton ice. They closed the two houses. That's my 2 daughters years ago. So in the one who is not Passive House, the classical one, as everyone here, it melted down in only 11 days. The thing is, it was a catastrophe for us. We panicked like hell because we had the federal minister and the regional minister, both 2 women, they were a bit fighting, but okay, opposite parties. But they came for here, they support that. And when we saw, it was a crazy hot spring in May, it was heat waves, my God. When we saw that it melted down in 11 days in the normal one, we start calculating in the Passive House how much ice is going to stay after 6 weeks. And we did a lot of dynamic simulations and so on. We were all wrong, of course. This is why building physics is for. And after 44 days, before taking out the small house, Passive House, the 2 ministers called us and said, look, if there is no ice, we don't going to come tomorrow, because there was the television, national broadcast, and everything crazy. So we were panicking like hell. So we came at 7 in the morning, and we said, oh my God. And what we discovered, it was a surprise even for us. So it worked. Half of the ice was there. So you see, insulation work. So people receive, okay. So it was working. The year after, we did it, but in winter, and it was with heatings inside, and people could see live how many energy you are saving or not. What is funny is, regarding that calculation, in an hour, when I'm going to be finished, my country is going to lose like $250,000 because they are not passive house, all the buildings. So we won a competition for the Belgian embassy in Congo, Kinshasa. But you know, it was more tricky to make bulletproof Kalashnikov buildings than passive house. Now it's under construction, so we insulate it and everything. And we proposed to the government, look, it's a design and build, so it's together with a contractor. You should do a passive house, even if it's in a tropical country, because if I take the Köppen classification climate, Belgium, I don't know why, but we have a small concession in South Antarctica, and it's also a solar station, passive house polar station, and it's one of the coldest places on Earth. So we tell to the government, look, if we have already on the cold place on Earth a passive house, let's do it on the hot climate, which is not only hot, but it's mainly 100% air humidity. But it's not because of that we won, of course. It's because of the price, again. This project is, as I said, under construction for a cost of about $12 million. But what was a surprise, so we are here, this is passive house. There were other companies, other concurrents. They proposed normal buildings or low energy buildings for 25 million. So they were twice the price. So we were wondering what's wrong with them, or what's wrong with us, I don't know. But so this is the real reason. Now they communicate on, look, we are here and here, but that's fun. Another example we had for a developer, I'm going to come back on that brewery renovation, retrofit. So we make a small building here. And because it was a passive house, again, it's a catastrophe for us because it's been done for a cost of 90% compared to classic. So they sold everything in 1.5 months, and they sold it for at the same cost than a classical building. So we asked the developer, but are you crazy? Why did you sell all these apartments at the cost of a normal one? It's passive house, and it's nice location on the river. And he said to us, look, it cost me 10% cheaper. Why should I sell it more? And this is what is happening now. It's become normal. So all the market is calming down, and this is really nice. So this is where we just are delivering this one now. It's a big project, 130,000 square feet, housing and school. So the school is housing just delivered now. School, it's 3 months ago. Kindergarten, you have a sport hall, primary school, and so on. And it was also a call for tender builders together with architect engineers. So we make a lot of funny and funky design. So everything against normal good prices. We also play with colors and so on. It doesn't look like a passive house. No one knows that. The director knows because he can have a bill of almost nothing. We play with color. It was very fun to make all blue, green here and there. But here, these were all the entries. There were 17 entries. At that time, they didn't ask passive house. They just asked a school and housing, 50 housing. So that's the total block. And it was again a surprise for us. We were here, so we are here anyway. So we were not only the cheapest, or our contractor, but in the 4 passive house, also the cheapest. So we were wondering what's wrong with all these guys. So after a few times that happened, we did a lot of studies of where are going the costs. How come that some are so cheap in passive house, and how come that sometimes you have double the price? Here's the same. It's like social housing. Also, it's not only passive house. It's more. It's close to zero. So and it's really now that it becomes normal for everyone. We had a lot of also a question of how is people behave in this building. So here I'm open thanks to Ken online monitoring. So we have a lot of monitoring ourselves that we download because it's easy to control and see how it's working. I'm wondering if. Okay, I'm going to put it. So I'm going to show you a live. I hope it's working. if internet is working. Oh yeah, it's okay. So I'm going to take apartment above. So it's one of these 30 apartments. So you can see here we have a survey. Yeah, here is all the temperature since a year. We finished this condominium a year ago. And when you see the temperature, it's between 22 and 25. And this morning, or now, alive, okay, we are June 11, you can see. It's quite okay temperature. Yeah, it's a bit hot yesterday. I'm sad for them. Maybe they leave everything open. They didn't put the sun blinds. They are there, but they are free. They do what they want. And now, it's in the evening now in Brussels, 6 hours more. It's like 24 degrees. So this is to show if still people would ask if that is working, of course. So it's this building. Again, we also test how does it request to go to a zero energy, complete zero energy on the bill, not zero impact, zero CO2, whatever. No, zero on the bill. If I had to explain that to my grandmother, she would say zero is when I pay nothing, of course. No matter how physics is behind whatever. So here we did social housing. It's classical passive house, and we fill all the roofs with PVs and photovoltaic and etc. And there, at least we had an extra cost, almost double the price. That was fantastic for us. Cool, we could have a bit money. It was time. But the extra cost came from the zero energy. But what was funny, this is a passive house. So sometimes people say, but come on, I'm doing a low energy, it's already something. And for us, when you do something else than passive house, you are very courageous because you mortgage your investment because you cannot evaluate in the future. Like a passive house, then you have a chance to go to a positive building or zero. But if it's not, difficult. So here, despite this passive house, we had to use the neighbor's roof to compensate all the energy. But it's possible, we did it. So this one here, so we are on the roof and we use the roof of the neighbor, that's light photovoltaic panels. We paint his roof in white. It's the same owner, social housing, but then we calculate if we would have not done a passive house, but a low energy, which is already okay, no? What does it ask to go to zero energy? Then we should have fulfilled all the block, but the problem is owner only to that. So this is, well, for us, a proof that if you don't do passive house, my God, you drop the money. It's stupid, because you have to re-renovate it within 10, 15 years, 20 years, I don't know. So now even for real estate, this is almost over. Since we integrated all the building physics, thermic dynamic simulation and everything in our office, so all our architects are doing that, just like normal, like drawings, whatever. It becomes very cool to make passive house because we, of course, this is not a clever way to do passive house because it's not very compact, it's not well orientated, but I prefer to do the building there because you have to put a better orientation, I have to put it on the street, but that's not allowed, okay? So orientation, it's nice, it's funny, but on real life, what do you think? And this is one of the main big real estate company in Belgium we have, so they're not really funky. They say, look, you do what you want, I don't care. It has to be at the same cost than the normal one, and it has to support any kind of users inside. Okay, so here we have a extra cost of zero. So it's under construction, it's almost over. And they have already a ton, and that's funny because in that neighborhood, there is more than 15 million square feet empty because of the end of the crisis in real estate. This one has been completely rented straight away. That's very funny. Also in wood construction, of course, as everyone. This is the last we want, just that you put on the invitation. It's a big district, and we are on the south of Belgium. And there was a kind of, I just showed that to show how we do conception. It's not passive house, but there was a kind of pressure in that competition because we were surrounded by mega stars like Madonna, Lady Gaga, but for architects. It's called Calatrava, Oma, Rudy Ricciotti, Ron Arad. So they were super mega stars. So we are here between Calatrava, but it was okay because he already had 500% extra cost. So but it's cool, huh? It's cool. But the developer and the region and the municipality and everything said, no extra cost, zero, of course. It's, of course, you know, it's our daily bread, don't worry. But we have the river here and so on. So we did the competition, and 2-3 weeks before we ended the entry, we learned, my God, there is Jean Nouvel, who is one of the competitors. So I said, okay, we're dead. Are you saying Jean Nouvel? Okay, so this is what they ask. And instead of just adding a more extra design, whatever kind of, I don't know, Franco-Gehry design, whatever design, I don't know. We just work like by combination of information. For example, you have two main streets. The hill is here. We bring the hill down to the river. Then we put a kind of raster who is connected to the two main axes. Then we do like in puzzles. All the plots, we rise them up and we linked to the existing location. And then we move them a bit, like a sequential, I would say that. And that gives this kind of movement. And it's a mix of housing, shops, offices, garden on the roof, share gardens inside, outside. And this city is called, the city is Liège, it's called the City of the Thousand Church. These are all the modern ones, the Calatrava, some very famous building. So we introduce a kind of new typology district on that zone. So it's this one here now. We play with the ground. When you lift it up underneath, you can put shops and so on. All, of course, passive house, what do you think? So it's that way. These are small hills inside. And all that done at the cost of a classical building also. I'm going to go a bit farther. So this is just to show also with public places, etc. So it's an investment of almost $600 million. Unfortunately, we couldn't make extra cost. That's too bad. So the unexpected consequences. When people say, even now, and I agree totally, when people say that passive house cost a lot, they are right. We even have a project who costs 200%. It's not the 5, 10%, 200%. It was cool for us. So they are right. And when people say, come on, passive house costs nothing, it's okay. They are right too. It all depends which are the factors who drive you on the right or on the left. That's all. We did, as I said, a lot of studies where are going the cost. So these are cost construction of classical buildings, and here is construction cost of passive house buildings. This is the one we have here. It's one of the cheapest one. What we saw in all of the studies, I just show you one of the consequences that the minister used a lot, is the influence factors, the extra cost influence factors. There are some, like in classical building, passive house also. But we saw that in these 50 projects we study in details, 11% of the extra cost was due to a better envelope, airtight and maybe triple glazing, not always, but sometimes, okay, and big insulation. Okay, that's right. What we saw also is that 25% of the extra cost was due to the way you choose your construction system. For example, we are in a country where people used to work with concrete, so I'm not going to ask them to do wood. Every time we asked them to construct in wood, we loved it. We had crazy extra cost. And on the contrary, you have another region where they do just but wood. If I ask them to use bricks, my God, they're going to have just but extra cost. So I'm sorry, there's no surprise, but if you ask local contractors to do something else, of course you're going to have extra cost, but this has more influence than just the envelope. So when you have a building who costs less than classic in passive house, it's just because people are more clever in the way of construction. Another thing we discovered that has for 29% influence in all these projects is the way if you share the risk or not. For example, if you do a design and build, so you give an entry together with a contractor, so you're going to design your project together with a contractor the way he works, which is a special way to work, and it's going to be maybe different than another. This is completely different than when you work as architect alone and you ask prices. I shouldn't say that, but normally when we ask prices as architects, all the contractors answer of what we have designed. Sometimes they answer, what the hell has he designed? But okay. And sometimes they are okay, but the answer, they just give a price for what we did. And sometimes it's not exactly the way they would have done it. But when we work together, that has more influence. And this is when all the extra situation, pollution, whatever. So it means when you have a building, it costs less at the end. In passive house, it's just because the structure is better, or we work together with local skill, local manufacturers, and that's the way they do. This has more influence than the small extra cost of the passive house. That's the only way. And when people say passive house is difficult, they are right too. It's hyper tricky. And some of the people say passive house, it's nothing, piece of cake. They're right too. Here, an example. This is all that came from contractors or workers. On the left hand, this is thermically fantastic. So you put the window where the insulation is, great. You have a nice psi value, 0.02, fantastic. A contractor says, are you crazy? I'm not going to put that. It's so heavy when it's a big window frame. I'm going to put it in the wall. On top of that, I don't put blocks, I put concrete. This is already airtight. Cool. So the airtightness, he put it here, just a stupid membrane. Here, we had no extra cost for airtightness. And here, it's a bit worse than here. Of course, 0.01 worse. But come on, what are we talking about? And in the total, you have no condensation inside. And I stay below those 15 kilowatt per meter square. If I'm 10 or 11 or 12, who cares? Another solution here, that building, we have crazy extra cost, which was party for us, for our bill. We did a lot of, connections here through the insulation and so on. So in the very big years ago, we did that crazy work for the craftsman here. It was the best day of his life. He received a lot of money. Because it was the purpose to avoid that, to what are going from inside to the outside, of course. So when we simulate all that in calculation, we discover that the heat is going there, going down, outside here, so it's crazy. And this is crazy when you have to do that. So I totally agree. We did it. It's crazy. I even wonder how our contractors could do it, my God. And in all that things, the only really impact element, you know what it is? Is that small, white, tiny. It's a PEHD. It's like a small plate of thermal bridge stop, which is nothing. Small plastic, high density. And when we did that project, which is bigger than this one, that's one part of the building. We have 2,000 core bridge like that. So you think we're going to make 2,000 connections like that? No way. So we just took this small element, we put it in an existing construction system, nothing new. And the contractors, they put it here, that white element. They just asked, even didn't know it was a passive house. They knew nothing. It's a normal building. And they just thought maybe architect is crazy. Ask us to put those white plates, could be chocolate plates, whatever. Okay, so they did it. And here, there was no extra cost. We couldn't, because otherwise we would have not had the project. So now, retrofitting. We are starting now. It takes a long time, my God. We should be already running, but okay. Here, we are doing a project together with Michel Penneman, who's here, and Julie Moscovitch. Julie Moscovitch, she made a fantastic book. It's not only passive house, but high design. And herself, she's doing very nice, very elegant design houses, my God. So together, we have a client coming from Belgium. They are just a tenant. They just signed last week the lease. It's in mid-packing, and when they're going to put shop and restaurant here, so we're downtown. But when they came to us, we proposed them, but look, if you do something, just do it passive house. Even if it's not your building, you rent it, but it's so high, the rent here. So we make a calculation how to make it passive house, because it's really, so we show them that before and after it's going to be the same, just on the bill it's going to be different, but because you cannot touch the outside, of course. But we're going to insulate it, everything from the inside. So we make preliminary calculation, how much savings we're going to have, which is very easy here, because all is by electricity. So it's almost $100,000 a year savings. So of course they say, straight away I go for it. Of course, what do you think? So, but how are we going to do it? So this is before and after, heating, demand, cooling. So this is the way we work when we do renovation. It's always a study done step by step, from scratch to, from existing situation to after passive house, to zero. Of course, if you do an insulation with double glazing, you're going to reduce the heating demand, of course. And if on top of that I put a big insulation on the roof, again, I continue reducing. And if I continue and I put a triple plane, for example, I'm going to reduce more, etc. And if I continue, the back facade, insulation, etc. So that's the limit, low energy, and this is 15 kilowatt per the passive house. So if I put insulation on the basement, in the front facade from the inside, we're going to put huge insulation and a new window, extra window from the inside that you cannot see from the outside, so it stays outside the same. And then just add the mechanical ventilation, air tightness, and that's it. The job is done. It's passive house. So we say to people, if you don't want to go to passive house, we go because we're a bit extremist. Well, everyone has to in our country, but if you don't want, no problem. You can stop before. The thing is to stop mortgage existing buildings. So if you transform an element, transform it, that it allows you in the future, if you continue, within 10 years, 20 years, to go to passive house and then to go to zero. So you stop where you want. for the moment that you change one element, you're not going to change it anymore. So we did it for this building. It's completely new building, renovation of office building in centrum of Brussels. This one we just start the work. It's a social housing, small high-rise. We just finished. It's going to be also a kindergarten down. There are 2 buildings. We just finished the demolition, so we're going to add now. This is from Austria, but we're going to put a new skin from the outside. It's under construction. Office building, these are going to be renovated in 100 dwellings. We just start now the demolition last month, so it's very new also. But then you're going to say, but look, okay, but the meat packing here, we are in landmark district. What do you think? You cannot go from the outside. And you're right, and that's what we did for another renovation. It's an Art Deco 1934. It's protected. It's a listed building. It's also in landmark. So you don't see it. Yeah, here, of course. But downstairs, you don't see it. But it's renovated from the inside, also in passive house. So it's completely new insulation, new window from the inside. The inside windows, not like here, but in meatpacking, we're going to put them bigger than the outside one, the existing one. So you don't going to see, you see nothing here. If I don't tell you, you see nothing. So this is what we're going to do, new facade. And we did also on a large scale, that's an industrial building, also in landmark area in downtown Brussels, next to the river. It's an hotel. There is more than 600 people sleeping there every night, and it's a surprise. It's the one who has the high ratio occupancy. It's 92% occupancy. Average is 63 in our country. Here is 92. It's for a German company. It's called Menninger. They are from Berlin. But they did a new passive house. It was funny. They're from Berlin. But we proposed them, look, we do only but passive house. But if you don't want, take another architect. So, okay, go, I don't care. But we had to do it for, again, a cost cheaper than classic. It's really annoying, but okay, we did it. But, you know, they go for it because they saw, oh, we can have almost $200,000 savings. Of course we go. What do you think? So we renovate also from the inside, which is a bit more complicated. You need also extra tools, woofy, whatever. But now it's done, and it's also a boutique hotel. So, and it has an enormous impact on the neighborhood. And we are now finishing a small study here for a project in Newark, renovation on the other side of the river here. We will see. That's the existing building. We change it, we lift up the corner, and we transform all in passive house, of course. And it's hotel, retails, and whatever. And when you lift that up, you can go inside, come in here, and go on the roof, just a phantasm. But of course, it's also a passive house, of course. And what we saw also in iDesign, there was a lot of question for architects, very famous architects who work in our country, like stars from a bit everywhere, OMA, etc. And ask, yeah, but can we do high design? Can we? So this is, for example, a project under construction now from the Gator. He came from OMA. No, we don't see them here. Yeah, hold on. I'm just going to show. Yeah, this is Jean Nouvel, for example. He finished police headquarters in south of Belgium. It's a passive house. You don't know it's passive house, but what's funny, because Jean Nouvel before and after passive house stays Jean Nouvel, of course. But the thing is, you cannot say to Jean Nouvel, well, Jean, you know, your connection detail should be, you say, don't worry, your design stays, don't worry. Maybe it's not that clever, so you can have more insulation. Okay, so it's not that bad. And this is one of the last main competition won by Baumschlager and Eberle. That's also our parliament. Big renovation start from another architect. This is Baumschlager and Eberle from Austria. They won an enormous big for BNP Paribas, a big bank. It's 1 million square feet, completely funky design, but it's all passive house. So now I'm going to end with these 2-3 information. So after doing just but passive house, normally, of course, we have integrated all the tools, so we don't outsource that. It's all part of our daily bread, I would say. Also in solar ray calculation that we can measure on site and whatever. It's for architects. So now, if you excuse me, I'm going to talk for architects just a minute. There's a kind of crisis in architecture because of the modernism criteria we had for forms or program and so on. People is wondering now, but why doing such design or such another design and related to what for? So our interest that came for sustainability years ago, just a bit before passive house, it was double. It's not only, of course, to be consequent, of course, that's the minimum, but also we discover little by little that maybe we have an occasion as architect, because we work on the envelope, on the form, what is visible, not the invisible. Maybe we can have there a renewal of architectural elements. So the question was, is it possible to reverse the process? So instead of we make a building, we make it passive house, okay, that's okay. But can we reverse and refeed architecture and maybe bring, I don't know, new way of doing buildings? And also, if you calculate on the behavior of the vid, you know, the air, airflows and so on, that can maybe redesign your architecture. So we took some references. There are not many people who work on that. It's very new. There's one here, it's Shinali, and they're just doing research. They don't build nothing. But he's right when he said that architects and engineers, we just work on the envelope, as we did 2,000 years ago, but or Borromini 100 years ago, 300 years ago. But why can't we use other elements, this composition element, like heat, water transformation, vapor, whatever? Could be that also new elements, not classical order or modernism order. And instead of doing, this is how he said it's very bad for us, but he's also architect. When you do architecture, you just do a stacked duck. So you put all your program, and at the end you have a building. Okay, nice. Sometimes it's nice. Or you do all the way wrong. You make a cool design, this is stuff pick, and you try to put inside all the program. And most of the time, it looks cool designs. But say, why can't we use all the heat transfer, everything we learn to passive house, all the building physics? Could we refeed that architecture? A bit like concrete, after years, it could help and generate new design, like you have here, the Sarinen, you know. So another is Philippe Ram. He played with computer fluid dynamic. He put in a room here, for example, a heat and a cold source. That creates a kind of Gulf Stream. Regarding that, high temperature, he put bathroom. Low temperature, he put toilet and so on. And this really generates the way he did his, it's a secondary house, of course. Here, for example, it's a complete building. You don't see it. It's been conceived only by the heat exchange coming in central zones and come back to all the apartments. It fulfill passive house, of course, at the end, of course. But it really helps. So what we discover is that Grasshopper, you know, linked to Reno. Reno is like SketchUp, whatever, we don't care. But what is nice is we have a pilot, a free pilot, Grasshopper. The guy who invented that say you can make new one also, but it has to be free and it has to be with the name of an animal, okay? So we have a lot of crazy names now. But this one is used now for architects or engineers to make meshing and whatever, just for the design, which is already okay, yeah? But you can also link them to extra calculators like Ecotect or an IES, for example. So we start using that only, end of last year. For example, for the Belgian embassy, because we do passive house, so it's airtight, a bit insulation, we reduce the cooling demand and the dehumidification by 70%. So we still need cooling, of course, but almost it's 30% only, which is nice. But one of the concepts we put those sun blinds. They are fixed, of course. In Kinshasa, nothing works, no techniques, no machines, so it has to be basic, my God. So we calculate on PHPP, and then we start playing, how can we have these sun blinds, which orientation? We wanted them that every floor is different, but how much simulation are we going to do? 1, 2, 3 maximum, it's hell of a work. So of course, when you do sun blinds from 50%, we reduce to 6% extra external radiation. So what we did, we put it in the Grasshopper here, the building with the climate data and so on, and we start playing and we put just meta rules. It's algorithm that you drag and drop, but instead of algorithm based on static or forms, we can put some algorithm links to heat exchange or small formulas like that. It's very easy to work. And that, we ask him to change all the sun blinds every 1 degree and then launch a new Ecotect, so a new ray calculation. And so he launched alone with our rules and meta rules. Another is every floor is different, and try and see, give me 200 simulation. And we will see. Few hours after, he came back automatically with a lot of new, we have here the solar radiation, and we had to be below a certain quantity to fulfill the maximum 120 kilowatt per hour, all included. And regarding that, this is how we built our different frames. So that was helped thanks to the parametric design. Another we did is also for this, it's another competition, we still wait the result, my God, it should be beginning of the year. So it's block, hundreds of housing, along the street and inside the park. We call it city block to city rock. So we make like funky forms, okay, of housing. All the same concrete core, but it's only in the thickness of the insulation that we make all the change, completely change. But the thing is, when you do that, okay, you do this form, there is a formula we use to have variable thickness. So in Europe, you have a lot of European norm, which is cool. It's that formula. But you think that when I'm going to calculate it, I have an average U value of 0.1, 0.12, that we're going to, after I change it a bit, we're going to recalculate it. Are you out of your mind? It's crazy work. Then what we did, we copied this formula, we put it in the grasshopper, and we start playing. And we blocked, we put one algorithm, stop the movement when we have more than average 0.12 on variable thickness. So this helped. On the other hand, we created also on the passive platform a connect tools, and if you click here, then you have a calculation for one single slope U value calculation, but that's for just a roof, but not with those crazy forms. So this is a way how we use now parametric design to try to refeed. And to end, we created now a kind of think tank where, together with Michel Penneman, a contractor and a developer, we integrate now whatever kind of funny design. So here's a new hotel we do now, 170 rooms, zero energy. It's a bit more than passive house, okay? But we use there a film. It's a retro-reflective films. The purpose is from everywhere you're going to look at, you're going to have a different color by reflection. Retro-reflectivity gives you back the color you have from the source, or whatever. We don't know if it's going to work. Maybe it's not going to work. But the thing is, try to push farther. Always stay borderline. Then the last one, we show it also when we went, I don't know if Emma Jones is here, but in Cooper Union, we passed by, we invest ourselves on a small, micro, affordable units. It can be housing, can be hotel, working, whatever. They're very tiny, it's 220 square feet. But can we fulfill passive house? But not only, but can be 100% autonomous with a cost less than $100,000. It is now yet. And also design. So that's the inside. So the first one is finishing now, is going to Florence in Italy, beginning of next week. And at the end of the year, we're going to bring one here in the meat packing. And also is to make a monitoring here and to make a monitoring in our country and to see how does it stay. And to end, I come back to Rem Koolhaas, OMA, star of Sky is the Limit, you know, for architects. He made a report years ago when he said, look, if you do new builds to be energy-free in 2050, try that the new build is close to zero energy, and renovate as far as you can existing stock. But new stock should be like close to zero energy. And he said, by close to zero energy, I mean the German passive house. So this is how I start with the students. Thanks, Rem Koolhaas. Okay, thank you.